Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Declan Dagger. I'm the founder and CEO of EmpowerTheUser. We're a technology company specialized in simulations for skills. So I'm going to be talking about skills today. It's a global problem area of skills shortage in numbers of different sectors and numbers of different areas. What I'm asking you today essentially is three questions. Are you looking for effective ways of delivering skills-based training and assessment in your organizations? Are you looking at ways of increasing learner and manager engagement and satisfaction? Are you looking to be able to inform L&D decisions on more actionable skills and behaviours data? Being able to do this in a cost-effective way. What I'm talking about here is something different. So don't think about LMS, don't think about content. It can integrate with LMSs and it can reuse existing content. What we're talking about is a skills simulation platform. And essentially what that is three core tools that allows you to very, very quickly and very easily build complex skill simulations. And they can be targeted at procedural areas or soft skills areas. So anything from sales through to customer services, through to decision support, leadership, negotiation, interrogation, the list goes on. To be able to deliver them in a scalable online way through a cloud-based simulator so that the end user can interact, can self-assess, can practice, can iterate and practice and master the skills that are being developed. And also to provide real-time analytics and tracking capabilities so that you can monitor and assess and understand where the skills and behaviours gaps are emerging in the different areas of your business. We don't sell content, we're selling tools capability. So what the skills simulation platform essentially empowers you to do is three things. So it's about assessing skills and decision-making capabilities in pretty much any role. So think situational judgment testing, think psychometric profiling, think performance measurements or skill gap analysis. It allows you to deliver targeted personalized training in the context of jobs. So specific skills required to perform optimally in the job. So think about performance coaching or situated training, on-the-job training, all wrapped up in a nice self-regulated learning package. It gives you the capabilities to monitor, and that's monitor everything from engagement and satisfaction through to skills and competence and behaviours. And essentially it allows you to do this in a continuous way. So it's not about doing it in once off, it's about embedding this essential technology and capability in the L&D functions so that it's a continuous thing informing all your decisions. And essentially you get three capabilities or benefits from the platform. Number one is about reducing the cost of delivering your skills training and assessment. In parallel, you're increasing the effectiveness by essentially giving learners and users the capability to assess before, to practice and iterate through and master the skills. You're giving them a new and exciting and innovative way essentially to engage within learning. So we're talking about immersive simulation, we're talking about video, audio, very immersive. And to give you an idea of where the skills simulation platform is being used, it's being used in like large financial services companies looking at sales training, through to customer services training and HR training and large technology companies, all the way through to specialized training in mediation and arbitration. So it's very, very applicable across a broad spectrum of users. And today what I'm going to focus on is essentially two tools within the platform. So it's the development tool and the software as a service cloud simulator. Essentially there's 8 building blocks. There's 3 core building blocks at the start, which are decision options, branching paths and skill constructs. There's 5 extension blocks that bring in coaching interventions, reflection prompts, quiz triggers, targeted feedback and randomization through branching. So what I'm going to show you is essentially each one of these building blocks in correlation between the development tool and the simulator. So it gives you a flavor of how you build it and what the learner and user interacts with. So first of all, looking at decision options. So within the development tool, it's a simple drag and drop tool. You start off with a canvas. You can add as many decision paths, essentially, or decision options. So if you're in a sales scenario, you could put in options here where the learner can be essentially applying the sales process. And the character or the person that they're trying to sell to can be responding in a number of different ways. So essentially you can add as many of these decision options, and this is limited. So you can add as many simulation or decision options that you want. And what this looks like for the learner is...
Okay guys, it has come to my attention that AGL are close to launching a product similar to GreenTool. We need to beat them to it. So the first thing I want to address is a clarifying of roles and responsibilities which have become muddied since the redundancies last year. The reason this is a priority is that we need to shorten the timeline for the launch of GreenTool.
Shorten the timeline?
Hang on, back up there. Is AGL's product identical?
So very similar to immersive role play. So that's essentially how a decision option is played out. Next up, we have branching paths. Okay, so this is where you essentially create the logical links. And a branching path essentially can connect any of your decision options. So you can connect them based on situation or conversation or based on procedural logic. Very, very easy. Again, drag and drop, you connect the decision points. What a decision point then looks like for the learner is when they get to a particular point within the scenario, they're presented with the range of decisions that you've given them. So they can review, they can analyze and choose what they think is the most important.
Okay, guys, it is
So that cuts off. So you see how the selection works and the branching paths work. Next up is we have the skill constructs. So this is essentially where you can load in the skills, procedural, soft, wherever the skills are that you're actually building into your simulation. So you very, very easily on your connector paths or your branching paths, you can activate your skill constructs and then based on that path, give them a score. Very, very easy to use mechanism for loading your skills in and then loading the weights onto those skill constructs.
Okay, guys, it has come to my...
And from a learner's perspective, when they make a decision within practice mode in the simulation, so this is when they're practicing, not when they're assessing, they get to see the real-time feedback on the impact that that decision has on the skill constructs being measured. And in assessment mode, all of those decisions are being chained together and all of the scores are being chained together into a performance review, essentially, which gives them an overall score in how they've essentially handled the different skills and procedures of that scenario. Next up, we have coaching interventions. Again, very easy to add these into the model. It's a drag and drop mechanism. You add your trigger into a particular decision point within the model. You load that with a transcript. You can add your media files here. It could be audio, it could be video, it could be image. You choose the media file that you want to use. When a learner traverses across this, here's what they see.
Be respectful. Thank your colleagues for taking the time out to attend the meeting. Also, is guys a respectful way to address everyone in this setting?
So the coaching triggers essentially within practice mode allow you to deliver targeted feedback and instantaneous feedback on a decision. So a very good way of giving feedback on cause and effect of what's just happened. Next up, we have targeted feedback. Targeted feedback is geared, it's similar to coaching, but geared a little bit more at the strategic overall approach. So essentially, targeted feedback is loaded up onto each of your branching paths. So you can choose to add this at any particular branching path as you want. You literally just drop in the feedback text. And then as the learner or the user is interacting with the scenario, as they're traversing across those paths, that feedback is being collated and it gets presented to them in a very easy to use digest, essentially, that shows them the areas that they need to practice on. So based on the decision paths that they took, here's the things that went wrong and the things that they should practice. Next up, we have reflection prompts. So again, loading them into the model, very, very easy. It's drag and drop. Reflection is a very, very effective way to essentially encourage or support the transfer of learning from the simulated scenario into the actual on-the-job practice. So the reflection prompt, essentially...
It's come to my attention that AGL are close to launching a product which is extremely similar to Green Tool.
Are you sure you have your facts right? When are they planning to launch?
So after the user's made a decision in practice mode, they get the reflection prompt. They're asked to think about something similar that happened in a recent experience. They can write down that reflection. They can keep that personal in their own learning log, or they can choose to share it with other users in the organization, and then the other users can rate it and rank it, and it filters to the top, building up this notion of a corporate memory or a social user sharing bank. Next up we have is the quiz trigger. Again, drag and drop mechanism for loading it into the model. This essentially allows you to drop in sort of MCQ functionality at any point in the model. So you can load in Likert types questions, double choice type questions. So you very easily drag the trigger in, you select the questions that should be fired at that particular point.
Have you ever managed a team of people?
Yes.
So you've traversed across that decision option. You then get presented with this quiz trigger, which has the questions that you've just selected from the model. You probably wouldn't hire that guy based on what he just said, but needless to say, it shows the functionality. You can choose to put that in any part of the model that you want. And last up, we have random branching. Random branching is a way of essentially bringing in variation to the response types that the different characters can give within a simulation. So a good example of that would be if you're in a sales scenario, for example, you're at the closing stage of a sale. You can, from a user's perspective or a sales agent's perspective, you can say the same thing, but let's say the prospect could respond in 6 or 7 different ways, depending on variations or variables that are completely outside of your control. So within the modeling tool, you can model and develop all of those variations, and then by dropping in the random branching trigger, when the user gets to a decision point, essentially they randomly steer down one of those paths. So they have to think on the fly and then be able to manage those different types of ejections. So it brings in an additional level of reality or fidelity to the model. To give you an idea of where skill simulation models are being used, just to give you some examples of the models that have been built and are being in use, we've got a consultative sales model here from an insurance industry in the US. So we can see the model here is quite geared towards procedure. They have a well-defined consultative sales process, and the process is fundamentally important to everything that they do. So this would be a quite procedural heavy skills simulation model. We move into employee relations in an IT tech company. So here we can see the emphasis would be around softer skills, about how to manage communications and manage discussions and negotiations with particular clients. We've got skill simulations for medical training. This is for teaching doctors how to effectively communicate with patients, something that's drastically needed across the board. We've got skill simulations for communication styles. So this is a psychometric profiling tool developed by a Dutch company, but it's also a training tool as well off the back of those psychometric profiles. We've got skill simulations for performance reviews or performance appraisal conversations. So this is actually geared towards the public sector, an area that has, let's say, struggled in terms of training and development around encouraging performance conversations within the organization. We've got skill simulations down to situational judgment testings. So to give you an idea, in terms of development time, the big models that you saw at the top, the Google model, the Farmers model, about 15 days, person days, of their subject experts building the model. This particular one here, I built it, but I built it in 18 minutes. So it really depends on the scenario you're trying to build and your knowledge about the different types of scenarios. So it can be done very, very quickly. The last thing to emphasize essentially is we've gone through a lot of the building blocks and essentially a lot of the features of the skill simulation platform, but you can pick and choose those features, and we essentially help you to pick and choose those features to address the skills problems that you're facing. So to put that in a little bit of context, with the Google case, we had a couple of challenges. They were looking at essentially delivering some real-time feedback on employee thought processes in these ER conversations. Quite a soft topic, but quite relevant and quite challenging to address. So we essentially helped them to choose the features from the simulation platform that address their needs, and then they built the model. Similarly, in the medical school, they were charged with teaching doctors how to communicate effectively with patients. Student numbers were going up. They were using face-to-face role play to do that. So they could only really cover the very common scenarios that might occur on the ward. But by converting across the skill simulations, they can mock up any scenario. So they have medical interviews, they have mental health interviews, so you're interviewing schizophrenic patients or manic bipolar patients, things that wouldn't occur commonly on the ward, but when they do happen, you need to know how to deal with them and deal with them effectively. So essentially, I'm wrapping up now at the skill simulation platform. If you have any questions, I'll answer them now. If not, please feel free to visit stand 90 and go for a personalized demo. Thank you.